Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are live on my Paleo Parents group page today. Thanks, everyone. Whoever jumps on live is going to be awesome, but whoever can catch this later, this is going to be an amazing interview. I'm so honored to have Nicki Violetti with me today. Hi, Nicki.
Hi, Katania. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much. This is so cool. So for those of you who, first of all, let me introduce myself, as this will be shared hopefully widely over the internet. I'm Dr. Katania Taylor. I am an Oriental medical doctor in Reno, Nevada, and a holistic doctor practicing functional medicine as well as Chinese medicine. And I work in clinic as well as I do online consultations, nutrition, and functional medicine health consulting. And I'm also honored to say that Nicki and Rob Wolf live here in Reno, Nevada, where I live. So that's kind of cool to sort of brag about that. It's nice to have you here, even though we really don't see each other, but it's just kind of cool to know that you're around. And we have gotten together a couple times and know each other a little bit. So it's just really an honor to have you here. So Nicki Violetti is the wife of Rob Wolf. For those of you who don't know, I can't believe that anybody on my Paleo Parents page wouldn't know. But like I said, hopefully this will be shared, widely. So Nicki is Rob Wolf's wife. Rob Wolf, I consider Rob Wolf probably one of the sort of, the paleo movement was founded. I mean, we believe it's been around forever and ever and ever. It wasn't like ever started, but really it was made popular by a few people. And I feel that Rob Wolf was really one of those people that made it popular. And his Paleo Solution book, Nicki, did that come out in 2009?
2010, end of 2010.
Okay. So Paleo Solution was one of probably the first 4 or 5, or I don't know, maybe there were 10 books out there at the time, if that.
Boyd Eaton, I think, was the first one, followed by Lauren Cordain, has a couple books, and then Rob's was the first one kind of in this newer wave of paleo. So he kind of took their research and kind of, because he was so involved with CrossFit at that time too, kind of that helped become a vehicle to get the message out to people.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. So, Nicki, I know you have been sort of the business backbone and support, and of course, wife and woman for him. But I want to ask you a little bit about some of the, the business aspect of it. But today, I know you're very, very humble, and you don't claim to be a nutrition guru of any sort.
I'm not.
But, we can't help but realize you've been around Rob for, I don't know how many years, probably. How long have you guys been together?
Coming up on 15 years together. We're married 10. Yeah, so a while.
So obviously via osmosis and everything you guys do together, I'm sure, hopefully you're okay with us picking your brain a little bit today on nutrition, as well as you have 2 young kids, which we'll get to in just a minute. So, but tell me a little bit about, I do know Rob's story. He tells it a lot, and it's in his books about his health struggles early on and finding a paleo diet, as well as I know his mother had a few health issues. Tell me a little bit kind of where you came from. Where did you come in? Where was he in his journey when you came along? And then tell me about how you sort of jumped on board. What did you feel about it? Tell me about your nutrition journey.
Sure, absolutely. So when we met, I was actually vegan. My mom, and we met about 6 months after I had lost my mom due to complications from surgery. She had rheumatoid arthritis and had to have multiple surgeries, and one didn't go well, and it was just kind of a cascade of events with that. But so I'd always been interested in health, and at that, you go to college and you get inundated with friends who are vegetarian and vegan, and you read all these books. And so, it wasn't for kind of animal rights reasons, but mostly for health reasons that I thought that vegetarianism was sort of the way. And I'd been vegan for about 2 years when we met. Actually, the first date we went on, I invited him to a vegan potluck, and he likes to joke that he made sure to eat beforehand because he knew there wasn't going to be anything for him to eat there. So yeah, we had a lot of pretty interesting conversations early on about nutrition, but he was really great because, I mean, as you know, in his story, he was vegetarian for quite a while, and, became quite sick on a vegetarian and vegan diet. But he's quite good at cooking vegetarian. Anything. He's a good cook. And so while we were dating, even though I was vegetarian, he was paleo, clearly, he would cook me, tofu and beans and veggies, and then, cook for himself. And it was sort of this aha moment at one point when we were eating together, and I looked at my plate, and I had he had made some refried beans and some tofu and of course some veggies, but a lot of my plate was kind of brown and beige. And then his plate, I think it was like a bunch of, kale and bok choy and chicken and olive oil. And it was just this visual for me, which was like, okay, I get it. Like my plate does not look as healthy as your plate.
Wow.
And it was sort of this aha moment. And so then I started slowly incorporating eggs and chicken back into my diet, and eventually, beef and pork and the rest of it. Which again, I grew up eating all that stuff. It wasn't like I had an aversion to it. I just kind of got, swept away into the mentality that vegetarian veganism was the way for health. So.
Right. Did you experience personally many health changes or issues, or were you just already kind of healthy and it was just sort of that aha moment of what it looked like, but not so much personally for you?
Yeah, I fortunately have been very healthy. Like my dad's side of the family, we like to joke, has great genes. So we're pretty robust, hardy folks. So I can't say that I had any sort of, other than focus and attention. I think back to when I was in college and being vegan in college, I had 8 o'clock classes. I'd go to the coffee shop on campus and I'd get some sort of a coffee with vanilla syrup or with soy, whatever. And then a scone, a white chocolate chip scone. And I would go sit in class and I'd be falling asleep. And I think back and I'm like, no wonder it was so hard to stay awake in class, because I was eating a bunch of carbs, even though it didn't have animal products in it for the most part. It was not doing me any favors. So definitely, I guess that would be the biggest thing that I noticed was just mental clarity, energy, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So I know some of your recent endeavors, you and Rob together have been working on a keto workshop. Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about how you guys, so let's back up a little. Rob's latest book is called Wired to Eat. Mm-hmm. It does, talk a lot about finding your ideal carb load per person for each individual person. You guys talk a lot about glucose testing and monitoring. Mm-hmm. I know he mentions a lot that you seem to have better carb tolerance than he does. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that journey and how you guys have come around to the keto side, to the keto. Is it because he basically decided to go keto, or was it more because you saw a need and people sort of going that direction, needing guidance? So tell me a little bit about sort of from Wired to Eat and where you are now with the keto.
Yeah. So Rob's been talking about keto for years. So even in the early days on the CrossFit message boards, even early articles in the Performance Menu, which was an online magazine that we were a part of. And as keto's been gaining in popularity, so okay, back up, Wired to Eat. There was this research that came out talking about how different people respond differently to carbohydrates, both the type of carbohydrate like banana versus, white rice or sweet potato, and then also the amount. So some people can tolerate, some folks can eat a banana and have perfectly stable blood sugar response. And somebody else might eat the same banana, same quantity, and see their blood sugar elevate significantly and then drop. And so this research kind of highlighted how we're all actually quite unique. And it is based on a lot of factors, like were you born vaginally? Did you have lots of rounds of antibiotics as a child? There's a lot of different factors that can affect your carb tolerance. So that was sort of the premise of Wired to Eat. There's a whole chapter on the ketogenic diet in Wired to Eat as well, because some people like me may tolerate carbohydrates a little bit better. So I have a little bit more flexibility with that. So other folks like Rob, he doesn't feel good. If he has, if we have Thai food and I have some white rice with my curry, I don't notice any ill effects from that. I don't get foggy headed. I still have relatively good, focus and cognition, whereas he will literally feel pretty poorly after that. So, the book helps folks really understand that we are all different, and gives kind of a mechanism, a way of testing which carbs really work for you versus somebody else. So you can actually see maybe you do great with bananas and sweet potatoes, but white rice sends your blood sugar soaring. So that's not really a great option for you, at least not right now. There are some things that people can do to kind of improve their carb tolerance. Mm-hmm. So with regards to keto, We get this question a lot. People will be like, well, Rob, you're the paleo guy. Why are you now the keto guy? And he's like, well, to put it in perspective, paleo is what he calls macronutrient agnostic. When somebody's eating paleo, it's really comes down to food quality, right? They're eating, they're cutting out the refined sugars. Most folks are cutting out dairy. They're eating whole unprocessed foods. The ketogenic diet, on the other hand, really dials in the macronutrient ratios. And some people need that. Some people need their carbohydrates to be within a tighter bound than others. So that's kind of how it fits together. In the Keto Masterclass, which is an online course that we created to kind of help people, because there is so much information about keto online, but a lot of it's not accurate or can be misleading or confusing, to help people understand. And we encourage a ketogenic diet using whole foods. So basically doing paleo, but with ketogenic macronutrient ratios.
Right. Yeah. And, we all basically say in the paleo field, if we've studied it enough, that there's so many different variations in, peoples even that we look at that are paleo, quote unquote paleo, but they're, like the Inuit are eating, seal and blubber for 9 months of the year, versus, the Catawbans or, someone in the South Pacific is eating a much higher level of carbohydrate in their diet than, someone living in freezing cold tundra. So it's all considered keto. And we do have to, people like, you guys are out there helping people figure out what is right for them, because whether we're going by ancestry or, race or where we grew up, some of that might be effective. But at the same time, most of us have sort of deranged our metabolism so much that we need to just really figure that out for ourselves at the time. And I think that's kind of what you guys are doing and doing a great job of. And so do you feel, is Rob kind of keto then right now?
He is right now. And it's so funny, so interesting. So like the talk that he has given twice this year, and he's going to be giving this talk at Paleo Effects at the end of next month, April, is on metabolic flexibility. So and he calls it the Rosetta Stone to the macronutrient wars. So, you bring up the Catawbans, who have a really relatively high carbohydrate intake relative to the Inuit. And the question is, what's the ideal, right? People always want to know, well, what should we be eating? And the point that Rob, the interesting thing is that maybe it's not one ideal diet, but it's the ability to transition seamlessly from one to the other. So a lot of people who go really low carb, like, less than 25 grams of carbs a day, kind of keto carb amounts, will experience something called the keto flu in the beginning, where they just feel really tired, or they might feel, just feel low energy and terrible for a little bit. And if our metabolisms weren't broken, so to speak, from, like I said, the antibiotic exposure, just modern living, staying up late, exposure to bright lights all the time, like there's just a lot of factors that we're not living within kind of the circadian norms that our bodies were kind of wired for. And if that wasn't the case, then we would be able to transition into and out of ketosis, or, go through periods where we're having higher amounts of carbohydrate and less amounts of carbohydrate without any ill effects. But right now we have so many people that, if they get jittery, they just they can't seamlessly transition. So it's an interesting point that, like, there's not maybe one right diet for anybody. But if we are able to kind of repair ourselves and heal ourselves, then you can maybe tolerate a little bit more. So Rob historically has always been low carb. So like, again, paleo, some people do paleo and they're eating like 3 sweet potatoes a day, and, paleo brownies and paleo, like lots of things are paleo that can result in a pretty high carbohydrate load during your day. And he has historically always been, under 100 grams of carbs. For the most part. And over the last because he does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he has to kind of cycle when he does his carbohydrates, just for performance or reasons. So he's keto, but he does do more than the 25 grams, especially on training days. But he's able to stay in ketosis, even with a little bit of higher carbs. So it all ties. There's not like this blanket recommendation that one can give, because it depends. Like, how active are you? What's your sleep schedule like? There's so many things that kind of tie into it, and that's where there's a unique opportunity for everybody to really kind of figure out like what works for me, like how can I navigate this so that I get the results that I want, but I can also live my life and have, have the community and the social structure that I want.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, let's move on to kiddos, because we are on my Paleo Parents page, and I know I get quite a few questions and issues. Probably one of the biggest issues is people starting off in a paleo diet with their children. And, you, much more than me, I believe your kids are probably somewhat paleo in utero. Is that right?
Yeah, I pretty much, like, I did do some cheese. I did do some ice cream, not over but we've definitely just never done the gluten thing. Like, that's been like, we just don't go there. Yeah, but for the most part in utero, they both were.
So I think that starts, I believe that, and I've actually read that the children's palates can actually be formed in utero based on the amniotic fluid and what the parent eats. So, if you eat a variety, not only, flavors, but, also macronutrients, but, if you eat Indian food or you eat, right, more spicy food, I think that really does play a big role in developing palates. And, I was not paleo with my kids in utero, but I've been very lucky. I started them out pretty early. They are not picky eaters. They are great eaters. And I think that's kind of the situation you're in, which, we'll both say that we're very, very lucky. But I know you and I come across it. I certainly do. My daughter won't eat fermented food, so there's definitely areas where we deal with pickiness. So I definitely would like to address, some areas where we can help parents with picky eaters, especially when they're starting their kids at, whether it's 3, 4, 5, maybe 13 years of age, it probably just gets harder unless you can really reason with your kids. But really, palates and taste and all that is fairly ingrained, and it's hard to overcome. So I don't know, is there somewhere you can think of that maybe your kids are a little picky, you've had to adapt, or you've had to add, sneak stuff in, or add extra butter? Is there any kind of tricks that you can come up with, or maybe friends or family or someone that you've had experience with where we can give some advice on picky eaters?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely butter helps. But I've like my youngest loves butter. So if I put butter on anything, she would just like eat pats of butter. If I would fill her plate with that, she would be perfectly happy. My oldest, less so. She's more my salt kid. So salt, salt sauces, like my youngest also likes hot sauce. And so if she doesn't care for the protein, like she'll dip it in hot sauce and eat it that way. We always ask them to try everything. So like if I make, roasted parsnips or something, and they're like, what is this? I don't think I like this. I'm like, well, please try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. And they'll try it. No, I don't like it, Mom. Okay, thanks for trying. So we have this sort of try it, thing at the table. So, we always say thank you for trying it. And the next time we make it, I didn't like it before. Yeah, but you know what? You might like it this time. So try it again. And so we just have been really good at just offering it to them. We don't force them to eat it if they don't want to. As far as vegetables go, because so like for kids and like greens, it's a hard thing. Not every kid likes a lot of greens. If you find the ones that they do like, then clearly like try to have those in rotation more frequently. Like our kids, they like asparagus, but they only like the tips of it. They hate the
flowers.
They like, because that's like softer and easier to chew. And so like when we make asparagus, like we cut all those off and they get that, and we eat the like woodier, the base of the asparagus. So you can do stuff like that. If you find any kind of sauces or stuff like that the kids will actually eat, like pesto, my kids love pesto. So stuff like that, adding it to their plate and encouraging them to try dipping it in something like that they like. We make this kale salad that, my kids never liked kale, but one of my girlfriends makes this kale salad, and the dressing is super simple. It's just olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, garlic, a couple of cloves of garlic, and then salt and pepper, and you just puree it all up in a blender. And it's literally just fresh kale that you just, peel the leaves off the stalks, wash it, and then pour this dressing over it. And my kids, like they will eat like heaps of kale in this dressing. Wow. So, if I would just, if I could say anything, it would just be, encourage them to try it, try different sauces, salt, butter, those types of things, and if you come across something that they like, then obviously bring it back. But yeah, make them try everything. Like there's no harm. If they don't like it, they can spit it out. Like you're not going to, they're not going to die from tasting something, but they will, like after a few exposures, there's a good chance that they might actually like it.
Right. Yeah, I think they say sometimes 20 times before a child, their palate might change and adapt to that. And how about fermented foods? That's probably one. My 13-year-old son is great with them. He'll take gut shots with me. He'll do, he'll eat just about anything, the spicy kimchis, all that kind of stuff. He's fabulous. My daughter is super picky. She's even picky about pickles. I have to get the little cut ones. I try not to get the sugary ones, but trying to get the fermented ones. Any tips with fermented foods?
It's hard because like both of my kids like kimchi. My youngest more so. She's sort of my spicy food eater. We just get the mild variety though, and she'll crush it. She loves kimchi. We were making our own sauerkraut for a while. And Rob was involving Zoe in that process. So like getting out the food processor and weighing the cabbage and, and so I think, and granted, not everybody has time to make their own sauerkraut. Like it's not the easiest thing in the world, but if there's ways that you can involve your kids, that definitely gets them more intrigued and more apt to try stuff like that. But, I hated kimchi. I don't think I started liking kimchi until like 3 years ago because it had such a strong smell to me. So that's another thing too. Little kids have they'll smell something and be like, ah. But again, like just have a little. You can cut off a little piece, have them try it. You don't have to eat it, and then hopefully they'll gravitate towards it. But again, just keep offering it. Not every kid is going to like something at 5 years old, but maybe by 7 or 8 or 9, they'll warm up to it a little bit more. Right.
Got a couple of comments here. Carolyn saying that they love choices to get kids to try new foods for healthy eating. Also salt and fat, like we mentioned. So high quality, pink Himalayan or real salt is the brand. What salts do you guys like? What brands
We have some, I don't even know the brand. We have some like coarse ground pink Himalayan in our like salt grinder, but then we also have just the iodized Morton salt too, because that's another thing. Like iodine, like people get so focused on like the sea salts that I think there's a lot of people not getting enough iodine. So you can get it from like sea vegetables and that kind of thing. But having some iodized salt, like I use that when I'm making like a soup or something like that.
Okay,
add that to the food.
Yeah, good to know. And then Carolyn also says, let's see here. How do you deal with social gatherings with kids, especially birthday parties? Oh, I think I spoke to Rob about this one. Go ahead and tell us your side of it, Nicki.
That's a good one. So we usually bring we usually will, they know that we're going to a birthday party and they know that, usually most people aren't gluten-free. So to back up, like the gluten thing is the one that we're mainly a stickler about. Like if they go to a party and they have dairy or whatever, like they don't seem to react poorly to dairy. So we're not strict about that at all. So I'll usually go to Whole Foods and get like one of those Hail Marys. They're like those little chocolate torts. The girls love them. And, I'll bring something like that. Or maybe I'll find a gluten-free cupcake of some sort. And so I'll have that in my purse. And when it's time for the cake or whatever, then I'll just bring that out. And it hasn't really been an issue. The last party we went to was at the gymnastics place. And I we stopped and we got something and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure if the dessert's going to be gluten-free, but we have this. And then we got there and the woman was like, oh, we got gluten-free cupcakes because, my husband doesn't eat gluten and we knew that. And it was one of Zoe's classmates. And the little boy was like, Zoe doesn't eat gluten. So the mom got gluten-free cupcakes. So that was really sweet.
Yeah.
We did go to a birthday party where it was a dear friend of ours. She's in her 40s like me. And she is paleo. And so we're like, I didn't bring anything because she's been paleo for like 2 years. And I just assumed that the cake would be safe. And what I didn't know is that in their family, there's this tradition where there's this older woman who's like in her 80s, who's been a part of, like a dear friend of theirs forever. And that woman makes everybody in her family's birthday cake every year. Right. So here's this like giant glutinous cake, and my kids are there and, all the other kids are having cake. And so we were like, okay, it has gluten in it, but if you want to try it, you can go ahead and try it. Unfortunately, but neither of them seem to react the way that Rob would react. And again, like I grew up eating gluten. I don't eat it now. Like I've had some GI stuff if I get exposed to it, but I think they take after me more in that sense. So, at that particular event, we had the choice of like making them feel super isolated and not having dessert when all the other kids were, there were lots of kids there having dessert. So we chose to let them try it. And it, thankfully they don't react. Now, if I had a child that was severely reactive, like my nephew, my sister's son, if he eats gluten, like he's either throwing up or in the bathroom with diarrhea or both. So in that case, he wouldn't even have wanted it because he knows how that makes him feel. So again, you just have to pick your battles. Again, if you have a child who is sick or, for whatever reason really can't have it, then there's a hard line there. But thankfully mine don't seem to react that way. We don't have it in the house. We try to always prepare for that situation. But in that one case, I had no way of knowing that they had an 80-year-old friend that always made the birthday cake.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, if dairy is sort of a less dangerous option, maybe they can just have the ice cream or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So Malika just has a comment here. She says her 16-month-old had corned beef, hash, and sauerkraut this weekend, and he loved the kraut. That is awesome. This is actually my sister, and she is feeding her son so amazingly well. It's just, he's a fabulous, fabulous eater.
And just think of that little 16-month-old gut is like getting all of those good, the kraut juice and the kraut, like that's so good. That's awesome.
It is awesome. And actually going back to sort of the gut microbiome, you were mentioning the effects of being not as metabolically versatile, you mentioned antibiotics and being born by a cesarean section. So I assume you're basically talking about gut microbiome, which I am really, really into. And so, from Wired to Eat and just, a lot of different people that I am learning from, the gut microbiome really does have an effect on blood sugar balance, doesn't it? How we
they're finding a lot of, it affects everything. Yeah. And Rob likes to say we don't even know, like we're just cracking into this topic. In 5 years, there'll be so much more information, but like we know very little about it, but it's, it is huge in how it affects our health.
Yeah, it really is. So just getting those, getting probiotics in there and watching the antibiotics and just always replacing those gut bugs is what I always say, because that's just so, so important. Let's talk a little bit about,
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say with the antibiotic thing, it's hard. Like, I guess, I don't know if the statistic is accurate. It was something like most kids under 4 have been on like 6 rounds of antibiotics. Like that's kind of the average. So it's hard because if you're Zoe early on when she was first potty training got a bladder infection because she was, and I think it's kind of fairly common because kids are nervous about going on the potty or they hold it too long. They're working through all of that. And so we had to put her on a round of antibiotics for that. I hated doing it, but like, what's the alternative? So, if you do your best and then you try to, replenish with sauerkraut and, all of those other things and keep them as healthy as you can. But, sometimes I feel like it's overprescribed, but sometimes it's necessary. So you've got to,
sure.
You want to keep that little one alive. So.
Yeah. That's, we're weighing modern medical advancements where we're keeping our kids alive versus something that unfortunately can become more chronic, but we can hopefully revitalize that gut microbiome with a lot of these different variety. Variety is always kind of the key too. I always say is lots of different ferments if you can, probiotics when you need to really bump it up. And, so yeah, that's really important.
And not being overly obsessed with like the antimicrobial soaps. I think that's another big one that a lot of parents are like constantly like, those hand sanitizer type things. Like let them play in the dirt, let them get dirty. Obviously wash their hands, but like,
not all the time.
Let them play. Yeah,
for sure. Let them play in the dirt. Yep. Let's transition just a little bit to, older eaters, adult eaters. I think a lot of it's really the same. Salt is really an important thing, both for flavor, as well as if you are going lower carb and drastically cutting carbs, we do lose a lot of salt when we cut those carbs. So getting good high quality salt, and increasing the healthy fats. Any other tips that you've come across, especially probably in your keto, workshop and masterclass with helping adults sort of transition?
You mean like if they're picky and they don't like, it's hard. Like there's some people that don't like fat.
Yeah, getting rid of the junk, I guess, really. Going keto and or just kind of going paleo, getting rid of the junk.
Yeah. So everybody's different, right? Some people can have like cupcakes in the house that their kids are eating and they stay away from it and they don't, I think Gretchen Rubin calls them like people that can moderate, right? And then there's people that are abstainers. Like if there was a plate of brownies here, like I am not, I would be the one that's going over there and grazing the plate of brownies because it's sitting there all day long. Whereas Rob, he's really good at just, it doesn't call to him. So knowing what type of personality you are in that regard, like if you're tempted by stuff, don't have it in the house at all. And if there's a celebration or you really want something, go out, go to the store, buy a little thing or go get a single scoop of ice cream somewhere and have it there. But then you don't have the whole pint in your freezer that you're going to like keep chiseling away at like night after night or all in one sitting, like depending on the person, So, set yourself up for success. Don't have it in the house. Know that if you do slip up, this is the most common thing. Like people are like, oh, my friend came over and they brought this thing and then I ate it and like everything went to shit and I'm done. It's like, no, that was one meal. Was it an ideal choice? Probably not. But that means the next meal, you just get right back on your plan. I think so many people think that if they have one discretion, it's like over and it doesn't have to be over.
Yeah. You might as well just eat like junk the whole rest of the day or the whole rest of the week. Yeah.
No, your very next meal, just get right back on plan.
Yeah. And, I think I hear Rob say this, saying that to do things in moderation doesn't really work. But in the only case I would like to use that phrase would be, it feels a little bit more moderate to be a little easier on yourself. Like you're saying right there, if you've been a chronic dieter, especially those of us, I only broke this habit in myself in my mid-20s, that if you mess up, just get back on the horse. Don't let it ruin your entire day, just like you were just saying. So in a sense, moderation, just get over it. Don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, I think that's really great advice. And then, going back to Rob Wired to Eat, not blaming yourself. I think the coolest thing about his message in there was that we are wired to eat and eat sweet things and eat things that are when they're in front of us. Like that's how humans survived for hundreds of thousands of years. If there was a berry bush, if there was a honeycomb, whatever, wherever we get honey, we were wired to eat that kind of stuff because we needed to survive. And now
you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, right? Like we wanted to store the extra the extra calories. We were going to get the next meal. And now we live in this world where there's just every corner, there's some sort of convenience store or, like hyper palatable foods everywhere, things that like are literally stimulating your brain to eat more than you otherwise would. So we're in a rough spot as a society. It's a tough problem. So like the point I think you're making is in that book, it's like, it's not your fault. If you find it hard, it's not your fault. This is how we're wired. But now that you know this, like we got to make some changes and we've got to figure out some strategies for this.
Right. Work with, like you said, the type of person that you are. If you know you are going to eat the whole thing of brownies, don't have them in the house. But yeah, forgiving yourself and knowing that we're wired to eat and burn less calories than we take in, because otherwise we would not have survived, 50,000 years ago. So it's, we're mismatched to our modern day, and it is kind of a constant battle, but, just setting yourself up to win is really a great thing. And then, so kind of in sort of conclusion a little bit, because I do want to kind of let you go and not keep people too long today. Setting our kids up, I think having things in the house, if you're all eating different diets too, I think that can be really tricky. Setting yourself up. If the mom is dieting, but your kids are eating whatever, you might not be setting yourself up well. I think kids really should be eating what we're eating. They shouldn't have kid food. I don't believe, certainly at a certain age. Obviously infants and that kind of thing, but kids should be eating, from the time they can eat. Maybe you cut it up really small or you chew it for them or something, but they should be eating the way we eat and kind of setting the whole family up for success by not having some of that junk food in the house, unless it's a real special occasion, and then getting rid of it.
Right. It's, Yeah, and it saves you time too. Like I know moms that like make the meal for the mom and the dad, and then they make the separate food for the kids, and it's like, who has time to make two things, right? Like so, figuring out ways to just make it easier on yourself. As moms, you're super busy, right? Like being a mom is like challenging on 8 million levels. So
Absolutely.
like try to make it easier on yourself. The hardest thing that I've come across is actually the
Hold on, Nicki, you froze up. Shoot, hope we didn't lose her. Nicki, are you there? You froze up on me. Oh, darn it. Nicki, you're frozen. Okay, hopefully we get Nicki back, but if we don't, I just wanted to kind of, oh, you can hear me, Nicki. Okay, so I don't know what happened. We've got your frozen picture and I don't hear you anymore, darn it. Well, I'm gonna just chat away a little bit, see if you come back. So anyway, sort of wrapping it up, you guys, you know, for picky eaters, I think transitioning to healthy foods and paleo diets, you can do things like maybe make some breaded chicken at home, maybe with gluten-free, breading or gluten-free, what am I trying to say? Non-glutinous breading, and make that chicken nugget and then transition them away from, their McDonald's chicken nuggets, and get some carrots, get some more colorful vegetables in there, let them try a lot of different things and just slowly transition them, one veggie or, two at a time, and, adding in like Nicki was saying, those sauces and butters and fats that, most people can't say no to having fat on their broccoli or having butter on their, their veggies. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this today. Unfortunately, Nicki, I don't think you're going to come back to us, but thank you, Nicki, so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I think you really are a nutrition and health guru and a fabulous mom. And I'm so glad to be able to call you friend. And thank you for being here today. And thanks everyone else for your questions and for jumping on. And if you're joining us later, please feel free to put your questions below. And hopefully Nicki can jump back on and answer some of them as well. And thank you so much, Paleo Parents, and we will talk soon. Bye.